I mean, you're kind of thought of as a heretic now in some strange way. And,
Pariah.
Yeah, pariah is probably a better word. And the fact that you've been banned from Twitter it's very confusing because I've been following your tweets and I've been reading all the things you've written, and I don't understand how it justifies a ban. And I don't know what was the particular tweet. Did they tell you what the particular tweet was or what the offense was?
They never tell you.
They never told you.
Well, they never tell anybody.
They removed you for not going along with whatever the tech narrative is, because tech clearly has a censorship agenda when it comes to COVID, in terms of treatment, in terms of whether or not you are promoting what they would call vaccine hesitancy. They can ban you for that. They can ban you for, in their eyes, what they think is a justifiable offense. And they're doing this, and I don't know who these people are that are doing this, but they're doing this. One of the most important things about you reading out your history like that is to one of the most qualified people in the world to talk about vaccines.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's so. One way that some people put it is, and of course, since this has happened, I've been contacted by multiple lawyers that are looking at filing a suit, just like Alex Berenson has one against Twitter. And the point is made just what you just made. So the point that I think is kind of succinct on this is, if my voice, if there's no merit to my voice being in the conversation, whether it's true or not, whether I'm factually correct or not, let's park that just for a minute. Whether or not I'm right in everything I say, and I freely admit no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. That's one of my core points, is people should think for themselves. And I try really hard to give people the information and help them to think, not to tell them what to think. Okay? But the point is, if it's not okay for me to be part of the conversation, even though I'm pointing out scientific facts that may be inconvenient, then who can be allowed? And whether you're in the camp that says I'm a liar and I didn't invent this technology despite the patents, when there's a whole cohort of that, no one can dispute that I played a major role in the creation of this tech. And virtually all other voices that have that background have conflicts of interest, financial conflicts of interest. I think I'm the only one that doesn't. I'm not getting any money out of this. So I think that it starts to touch on some fundamental constitutional principles about rights of free speech. I suspect that's kind of where you're going on that.
Well, most certainly, but also how disturbing it is for someone who's not an academic like myself to watch people like you get silenced, and silenced in this platform of social media where people are exchanging information, they're posting up studies, and you're discussing different parts of this pandemic that are in the news and what the issues may lie in, and where your background and your expertise allows you to explain this in a way that maybe it's not being explained because of the narrative that's being discussed in the mainstream news. And to watch you get silenced, first of all, to watch you get ostracized. I've seen that. I've seen people distance themselves from you. I've seen people call you a crazy person and criticize you, but with no specific thing to point to. It became like a tag they put on you. Like, oh, that guy. Like, I brought you up to someone, and he goes, oh, that guy's crazy. I go, how so? There was no answer.
Yeah.
So, like, okay, so this is a thing. You're going to just say someone's crazy when they say something that's inconvenient or say something that makes you uncomfortable because you've decided to accept a certain narrative. Did Twitter warn you?
No.
Was there any tweets where they said that this is misleading or anything?
No.
No.
They never do.
Do you have any idea what the final tweet was or what the context was?
I think I do, and there's no way to confirm it until the lawyers, do their lawyering. Mm-hmm. Now, I did have, in the case of when I was banned from LinkedIn, remember this happened.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I was deplatformed from LinkedIn many months ago. And it was there was actually 2 events of deplatforming in LinkedIn. And in both cases, I was able to get an explanation for what the specific crimes were, the thought crimes. And in the first one, It was a LinkedIn posting in which I pointed out that the chairman of the board of Thomson Reuters also sits on the board of Pfizer. And I simply wrote, does this look like a conflict of interest to you? Okay? And this gets to your core question about tech. It's not tech. It's the horizontal integration across all major industries now under the control of common funds. All of these industries, the harmonization of the tech censorship, the interests of pharma, big media, etc., and governments, all being harmonized in their messaging globally. I mean, I travel a lot. Okay, I see the same, and I have physicians coming to me all the time about what they're experiencing. The same playbook is going on every continent. Okay, but getting back to LinkedIn, so this is the first event, and Steve Kirsch intervened, called up a vice president of LinkedIn.
And Steve Kirsch is a tech guy, right?
Yeah, he is. He's a Silicon Valley entrepreneur who you may or may not recall that I was on the Brett Weinstein Dark Horse podcast with Steve that kind of lit this whole fire up months and months ago.
That's right. Okay, that's where I first saw him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he has great network connections in Silicon Valley. He invented the optical mouse. And so he called this vice president of LinkedIn. The guy looked into it. Meanwhile, people started dropping off of LinkedIn in protest. And there was major press articles all over the world. And then they reinstated me, and I actually got a very kind letter. This is unprecedented, a personal letter from this vice president apologizing and saying specifically that they didn't have the talent to fact check me. And then therefore they were going to let me go. Now then, subsequently I got dropped again, and a phone call was made and they got put on. In that case, the sin was that one of their fact checkers, because remember this is Microsoft, one of their fact checkers had identified the Atlantic Monthly attack article that was written about me, and concluded that I was an anti-vaxxer and therefore I should not be allowed on LinkedIn. Now the context for that's fascinating is that Atlantic Monthly attack article that is often cited by my detractors, and it's a fascinating read. We could go down that rabbit hole, but no reason. It was written a few days after Peter Navarro and I came out with an op-ed in the Washington Times in which we criticized the Biden policy on vaccines and said that they should be reserved for those that need them most and not used universally. And we said some other things about the need of testing and tools so that people can assess their true risk. It was a political retaliation intended to take me off the map as I was starting to interact more of in a public policy sphere. Now with this Twitter event, my wife and I have racked our brains about what is likely to have been the tweet that triggered this. And, you never know. The last two that I can think of that went out was one that was on our Substack in which we referred to a fantastic video that has been put out by the Canadian COVID Care Alliance Group that summarizes all the malfeasance and data manipulation and misinterpretation associated with the Pfizer vaccines and their clinical trials. It's a super video. And, of course, I guess that is interpreted as something that would cause people to become vaccine hesitant. That's the sin in general, is saying things that cause people to become vaccine hesitant. The other thing that I put out immediately before that was a link to a website for the World Economic Forum that lays out their entire strategy for how they manage media, how they're managing COVID-19, and all of their core messaging. It's a fascinating website with links. Those are the only two things I can think of that would meet the criteria. So, my position all the way through this comes off of the platform of bioethics and the importance of informed consent. So my position is that people should have the freedom of choice, particularly for their children, and that in order to appropriately choose to participate in a medical experiment, they have to be fully informed of the risks as well as the benefits. And so I've tried really hard to make sure that people have access to the information about those risks and potential benefits, the true unfiltered academic papers and raw data, etc. And the policy that's being implemented is one in which no discussion of the risks are allowed, because by definition they will elicit vaccine hesitance. So it can't be discussed. But that's the fundamental background, that's the backbone of informed consent. So informed consent is not only not happening, it's being actively blocked. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and it's unprecedented. I mean, I can't recall a time ever where people weren't able to discuss the side effects of medication, whether or not the studies are accurate, whether or not people should universally take these things, or whether it should be done on a person-by-person basis. It's a very strange time. And so when someone who's an expert like yourself has a dissenting opinion, and you see that dissenting opinion immediately silenced or at least immediately criticized, and then these attempts at silencing,